Yo, what's up, everybody? House Divided Nation here on Orange Was Live. I'm Jeff Ketchum. No Chad Hastings for one more day. I let him have the weekend. He came back and was like, I'll do a show on Friday. And I was like, what are you talking about? What are you doing? Stay on vacation. Jeez Louise. Do us a solid, like, comment, subscribe to the page. Do all those things because I'm flying solo on a Friday, and I plan to just go stream of conscious for as long as I can go about a number of different topics that I think you will appreciate. It will include a rare, just outward and open apology for something that, well, we'll get into the specifics of my apology. I will not be the Fonz. That's one for the kids. Look that up if you don't know that one. I will admit, I'm like baby's dad in Dirty Dancing. When I'm wrong, I do say I'm wrong. And I say so many things that I'm wrong pretty much on a daily basis. And really, what's new? Guys, jump into the Specs chat. There it is. For those that don't know, we had a little bit of a mishap at the beginning of the show. You won't know it if you're watching this after the fact. But the live crew will know we're starting a little bit late. Sorry for that. All I can tell you is that our studio was just being a little gremlinly. Is that a word? Gremlin-y? Gremlin-y. I don't know. I turned that one into a word. Guys, special shout out to Texas Card House and Hijack Poker, the title sponsor of the show. I can't stress it enough. I play on Hijack. Download it onto your phone right now. It's like playing the old days, like Poker Stars or Ultimate Bet. You're playing against real people for real money. Easy to get your money in, easy to get your money out. You got to be inside the state of Texas. But I play tournaments on the regular. I'm more of a tournament guy than a cash game guy. I like the game kind of board game aspect of it all. I don't know. I'm just always much more intrigued and thirsty for tournament action than I am cash games. It's just me. So, look, a lot of things to get into today. By the way, good luck to the Texas women's softball team. They lost last night against Texas Tech. There's a game 3 in the College World Series. I haven't seen anything about, there was kind of some it's Oklahoma City. Surprise, scary weather. I haven't seen anything official. I'll keep everybody updated. Hey, Oscar, for the record, I see it up there. Oscar, if you're going to say that I'm wrong too much for one take to get a video, you have to use the correct version of 2. You can't call me out like that and then leave the extra O off. I'm going to call you out for your mistakes if you're going to call me out for mine. No, it's true. I am wrong enough. But shout out to the softball team. Hopefully Mike White will manage his roster better tonight than I thought he did last night. Wow. It was almost as if the game was tied going into the bottom of the 5th, but it felt like the way he managed that game that they were playing for a game 3. Didn't really understand the pitching decisions. I didn't understand that entire 5th inning. And then, the defense let this team down. They will not win tonight if they don't clean up their act. Wild pitches, errors, 5 in 2 games so far against Texas Tech. So, hey, a natty's on the line. The only thing that matters is the next 7 innings, but they have to be better or they're going to rue the day. I think that they let Texas Tech back in this thing. It would be quite haunting at this point if they don't get the job done. Big Texas visit weekend in recruiting. I'll get into that a little bit. Trevor Gooseby, that was one of the big things, probably the big thing in the war room over at orangewoods.com. Scan that QR code. Check it out. There's a lot of stuff in there, some hoop stuff, some an in-depth preview of the entire weekend of official visits, which, again, I'll get into in a little bit as part of today's festivities. And, yeah, I'm looking out for super chats. If anybody has anything, I'll take care of you. Trevor Gooseby had a knee injury. Anwar Richardson reporting this in the war room last night over at orangebloods.com exclusively. It's why you go to Orange Bloods, because you get these little things. So Trevor Gooseby hurt his knee bad enough that he had to have an MRI, and the MRI came back clean. Looks like everything's fine, but woo! Given that in the last 24 hours, really since this morning, we found out the Evan Stewart injury at Oregon and that he's going to miss the entire season with, I believe, a patella injury. It's a reminder like that hurt. That really hurts Oregon. And it really is a reminder that so much of these national championship seasons ride on who can be healthy at the right time of the season and who doesn't lose players. Because Trevor Gooseby gets a scare. And like that, to me, that if they were to lose Trevor Gooseby to an injury, that's a big enough injury that I think it would eliminate them from a national championship discussion for me. I would really question this offensive line's abilities. Not that Texas would be bad all of a sudden, but I think we know when you get to those final two games in the semifinals and certainly in the finals that that's when you're going to play an Ohio State or a Georgia or somebody of that ilk. And they're going to have monsters on their defensive line like Texas does. And they need Gooseby. I think Trevor Gooseby's going to be, I've already said it, I think he's going to be drafted higher than Kelvin Banks. That doesn't mean that I think he's going to have a better career than Kelvin Banks at Texas, or even that he'll be a better player than Banks was. Like I'm not that far out on the limb. I think he's going to get drafted higher. And I think he's the only guy on that offensive line right now that I feel really good about from a high level play. So I was surprised to read that. Anwar didn't say, hey, man, he didn't tell me behind the scenes. Let me tell you about what happened. I got something in the war room about Trevor Gooseby. Man, they were scared for a second. Had to have an MRI. So I read that like everybody else did. And yeah, man, sometimes it is better to be lucky than good. I've been good a lot, and sometimes you lose. It happens. It does. You know who never loses? Lucky. Lucky wins. Otherwise, they're not lucky. That's kind of how this thing goes. Now, I suppose you could say, well, they were lucky to only lose by 2 touchdowns, I guess. But even then, I'd rather be lucky than good because I could have been good and maybe still lost by 4 touchdowns, apparently, based on the idea that losing by 2 scores is luck. So, file that away. If you're having a bad time this weekend, if you're like, man, can things get any worse? Yeah, man. Yeah, MRIs can come back negative or they can come back positive. And for stuff that you don't want them to. So Texas football team away, although getting ready to get back. They're back now. Yeah, summer workouts underway, and they'll be going underway. Everybody's in town. We'll get some more football discussion. I don't see anything over on the Super Chat. All right, let's just jump into my apology. And again, Anwar Richardson should really be here with me for this. Because yesterday, at the end of the show, I don't even remember how this came up. But Anwar brought up the subject of 2027 quarterback recruiting. And he had mentioned, because Texas had an elite camp on Sunday, and coming out of that camp, nobody was offered. They have offered Peyton Houston in the 2027 class. And we were talking about, they haven't really offered anybody else. So maybe they are telling Peyton Houston, you're our guy. They typically don't settle at the quarterback position. If you go back and look, they've been pretty stingy about quarterback offers, and oftentimes they don't make more than one. Arch Manning only got offered. Sometimes it goes that way. So we were talking about Peyton Houston, and Anwar said, I think Peyton Houston's the guy they want. And I think the lack of action is an indicator of that. And I don't think Sark will blink. And I co-signed on that. I was like, Anwar, you're exactly right. We kind of laid it all out. We were like, they're in a position where if they fail in the 2027 class, it's not even that big of a deal. Because that's what bringing a guy like Diabell in 2026 allows you to do. Or when you brought in Arch in 2023, it allows you to bring in Trey Owens in 2024, who's no slouch, but isn't quite at that level. So you're getting really good, but you're probably not going to have many years like Texas had from 99 to 2002 when they went in 99, Chris Sims, number 1 quarterback in the country. 2000, Chance Mock, regarded as a 5-star, top 2 or 3 quarterback in the country. Chance, I apologize that how am I your biographer and I don't remember exactly where you were ranked? Then they go and get it's like a 1 year anomaly. They get the Matt Nordgren, right? Best in the state of Texas, but not nationally thought of like the other guys. And then they got Vince Young in the very next year. They had 3 5-stars in 4 years. That doesn't typically happen. But if you're Sark, you're kind of good for 2 out of those 4 years. So when you look at the 4-year window and you can see how they've stacked up talent, you don't necessarily think that the 2027 class is going to be one where they have to kill it because they killed it in 2026 and they can always load up in 2028. It's not that big of a deal. All of that to say, I apologize. I was wrong. Because ours, hold on, kids. Sorry, I don't know if anything happened there, but I hit a button and sometimes it makes my screen just go away. Last night, yesterday, hours after we did the show, it was as if Steve Sarkisian watched the show and said, you know what? I think I'm going to mess with Ketch and Anwar. Those 2 dudes, a little too high on their horses. And he offered Kavian Bryant, quarterback out of Palestine Westwood High School. Oops. Bryant visited Texas on Thursday, worked out at the camp. Or when did he work out? Was it Thursday? I've lost track. Yeah, it was Thursday. He camped in Texas yesterday. I'm forgetting that today is Friday, so you're just going to have to forgive me. It's been one of those weeks. But they've offered Bryant, who's listed as the number 80 prospect in the state or the country for Rivals.com, mid 4-star prospect. He's got offers in basketball. He is a dual threat, dual sport guy. And had someone mention to me after the offer went out yesterday that it's different. It's not the same thing, but he's got a little Jonah Williams in him and that he is potentially an elite of the elite football prospect, but with a side thing, he's a really good point guard. He's got major offers. So keep an eye on that. He will become, I think, one of the buzz names in recruiting over the course of the next 18 months or so. And now with Texas offering him as a 2027 prospect, I think it says a lot about what they probably thought he looked like at that camp yesterday. So apologies. Anwar and I thought we knew a little bit more about Steve Sarkisian than we thought we did. And Sark put us in our place by offering another 2027 guy. Sometimes we do know what we're talking about. Sometimes. Do I have to say? Why do I have to say? I didn't bring this up. Anwar, where are you? We should be doing this together. Vivek says, is K. Bryant the new Charlie Ward? LOL. I mean, you know, and I see Colby says it's been reported that he will not pursue college basketball. No, I know. I'm just telling you that he is a football first guy, but he's a hell of a basketball player. But yes, football is expected. Just like if Jonah Williams is forced to pick one. And I do think there will eventually be a day when Jonah Williams has to do this. Football will be the wife and baseball will be the mistress. Or in this case, hoops. And Colby, well, all that means is that he'll play 500 pickup games a year like Trevor Gooseby and Arch Manning, and you have to survive the pickup games. So it always scares the hell out of Texas football fans when you bring this up because it's like, oh, wrap that guy up in wool. Don't let him out. And I'm like, man, these dudes are pooping all day, every day in the summer. They just are. They can't help themselves. Football players love to hoop. I can remember when I covered the Dallas Cowboys training camp professionally back in the 90s because I'm an old guy. And, God, it's like 30 years ago. That hurts. So, in fact, rest in peace, Dale Hellestrae of the Dallas Cowboys died. Not Dale Hellestrae, excuse me. Tom Rafferty. I was thinking of Dale Hellestrae. Tom Rafferty passed away for the Dallas Cowboys. Just thought I'd mention that. The first Dallas Cowboys center of my lifetime. Shout out to number 64, a really good player back in the day. Shout out to Dale Hellestrae's family. If they're watching this, didn't mean to put your loved one in a coffin. My bad. But I was thinking of Dale Hellestrae because Hellestrae used to hoop. I would cover these Cowboy training camps. And after they would practice, right, 2.5-hour practice in that Austin sun in July, half the team would end up at St. Edward's in the gym hooping. And I remember thinking then, like, is that the best idea? I never watched any of the games where they hooped and saw anybody with a near injury or a scare or anything like that. But I would watch Michael Irvin and Alvin Harper play basketball during training camp at the St. Edward's gym. And I'd be like, anybody here to tell them to stop? They got another practice in like 5 hours. Maybe they shouldn't be hooping. But then again, maybe that's why they're getting paid millions of dollars and one's a Hall of Fame wide receiver because they hoop. They football players hoop. Longhorn Football Edit says for $2, Anwar Judge dodging like SEC Mike dodged him. Hey, Longhorn Football Edits, here's the thing. I don't even know if Anwar knows. I think Anwar is doing some stuff with his son today. And, yeah, like, 50-50. Because that came out fairly late yesterday evening, late yesterday afternoon. I had to go back and look and see it's just what time hold on. I'll go look. I sent it to Sukamel. Let me just look at my team's channel from last night and see what time. That way I can, but I want to say it was yesterday evening because, well, no, it just doesn't. Oh, yeah, it was like 8 something. So the odds that Anwar were on Orange Bloods and saw that very specific title, we didn't talk about it in the team's chat. I think Anwar may not know about it. So to be fair to Anwar, he's not SEC Mike in the show. He's not. Jay Lee, $2. Is that what Evan Stewart is worth? Yes, Jay, we did mention Evan Stewart. We're talking about, if you missed it, Trevor Gooseby had a little bit of an injury scare, got an MRI on the knee. Everything's cool. No need to trip out. But like, it was a scare, right? And Evan Stewart, patella injury, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not looking at that again, but it's an injury that I saw was going to require 3 or 12 months of rehab. He's out. And Jay, I think that's a season changer for Oregon. I don't know what I think of Oregon. I really don't know. New quarterback, they're an insanely talented team. They're not Georgia and Ohio State yet, but man, they're kissing cousins. They're right behind Texas. They've done a lot of it through the portal. But, look, we could do this to Texas last year. The moment they lost Isaiah Bond, who maybe, I think he and Evan Stewart are fair comparisons. I think they're probably the same level-ish, inconsistently spectacular. Texas lost Isaiah Bond. That was never the same offense ever again. In fact, we start talking about when Quinn Ewers' problems began. Well, we connect them because he comes back for Oklahoma. And then that stretch from Oklahoma on, it's like, oh, man, he just never reached the heights of those Michigan games. Well, who got hurt in the Oklahoma game? Isaiah Bond did. The moment Isaiah Bond went out of that game with an injury, and think about it, Isaiah Bond came back for the Florida game. And it was the best the Texas offense has looked the entire second half of the season. Bond's back in the game, healthy. And he looked electric. They suddenly that offense had something that it had been missing and then continued to miss. And then they lost Matthew Golden in the playoffs. And they're trying to beat Ohio State with Matthew Golden coming off and on the field and no Isaiah Bond. You take an Evan Stewart off of that Oregon team, and it's a big blow. It's a big blow. So I don't know that I've thought of Oregon as a front-of-the-line national championship contender as they're breaking in a new quarterback, but they're going to be in the playoffs. They absolutely should be. And an injury like this, I think, will catch up to them around the playoffs. I think this is one of these. It won't impact a one-loss record in 10 games this year, but they'll play in a couple of games where that level of, Evan Stewart's a possible first-round draft pick. Now, I wouldn't say he's a guaranteed lock to be a first-round draft pick, but he's got that kind of athleticism and ability and talent. And here's nothing but well wishes for him on his return back from that injury. Someone you guys are feisty on a Friday in the chat. I see it. Rex, if you see this one, I'll pull it up on the screen. He says Stewart going down is like Nair going down for us a few years ago. I'm going to say not quite the same thing, Rex, but I think you're not far away from it either. Evan Stewart's better than Isaiah Nair. He just is. And I think Stewart's, for me, is the number one on that Oregon wide receiver crew, and Nair was going to be the number two to Xavier Worthy. But yeah. Because I think where you're right, when Nair went down, it became the Xavier Worthy one-man show, and Sarkisian was every single week rotating out a new starter at that position, even into the bowl game, to try to find the number two answer, the Matthew Golden to Isaiah Bond, who eventually became the number one because he was that good. They didn't have that year. So yeah, it's not apple to apple, but that's kind of apple to orange. They're fruit. I do agree with you. They're absolutely fruit. Solo Sonic jumping in, $4.99 super chat. Would you recommend I go to the game in Columbus? I always remember your story from the last game. Yeah, man, go. The trip was a blast. The Texas Ohio State trip in 2005 was a blast. The party scene was great, tremendous. In fact, there was a Texas Exes party at a bar on the Friday before the game, and I met a Texas ex who at the time, and if this isn't any of y'all's wives out there, I apologize. But I met this woman who worked at the Dave & Buster's. She was like the general manager of the Dave & Buster's off of Mopac. This is like 20 years ago. So I feel like I can tell this story, and it's not, I'm spilling too much tea on somebody specific. I'm fairly certain this woman hasn't worked there in a long, long time. So we met. She was dating somebody. I was mesmerized by her. Mesmerized. And man, I went to that Dave & Buster's, and I chipped away, and I chipped away, and I chipped away. And then I met my future wife, Heather, and we started dating. And after I started dating Heather, Dave & Buster's girl contacts me and is like, hey, I'm single. I'm free. Some bullshit is what that was. But yeah, sorry if that's what I think of in 2005 at the game at Ohio State. Look, the difference that night, me and the late Sean Adams traveled to that game together. And we're sitting in the Texas section after the game was over, or about a minute to go in the game. This couple that was sitting in front of us turned around and said, hey guys, I just want to apologize for what you guys are going to experience for the rest of the night. And Sean and I looked at each other like, that's a hell of a thing to hear someone say as the final 30 seconds of the game, or they apologized for the city of Columbus and all Ohio State fans for what was going to happen next. Okay. We're coming down the steps. We went and watched that game in a fun capacity. Even though I owned Orange Bloods, neither one of us were in a press box or anything like that. We went and had a good time. And I'll never forget, we hadn't left the stadium yet. We were just about to walk out the exits of the stadium. And I heard my first C-bomb. The one that rhymes with Hunt. It was getting showered. It was getting showered at 5 different women in Texas stuff. It was starting to get crazy. And it was bottleneck traffic. You could not get out. You could not get a cab. It was about 10:30 at night because it was a primetime game. It was crazy. Sean and I are just decided we're going to walk it back to the hotel. We can't catch a cab, but we eventually find a cab about a mile away from the stadium. Now we're we're taking the cab, and the cab decides it's going to divert to a side street that ultimately was where all the fraternities were. So it's me, it's Sean, and it's these it's two women from Washington, D.C. One was the president of the Texas X's in Washington, D.C., and the other was like her best friend. And so we're all riding in a cab together back to the hotel. And the cab, it's bumper to bumper traffic. So we're just sitting there. And about 5 frat dudes came over to the taxi cab and started dropping. And yes, Tex guy. Like I said, the C-bomb that rhymes with hunt. But yeah. See you next Tuesday. It's a very popular word in the UK. Sorry. Didn't mean to pull up the MAGA country. So, and then the N-words started getting dropped on Sean by these like 5 guys standing outside of the taxi cab. And it's like, it was, I mean, it's deplorable to hear someone say the N-word. It's another thing to hear it, how this was used against Sean specifically, but against all of us that were in the cab, right? This was like a hate crime taking place. And it was awful. Like, I won't repeat what was said, but it was as racist as it gets. It was as racist as it gets. And Sean's sitting in the back seat and I'm sitting in the front seat. And I turned back to Sean and I was like, hey, man, what do you want to do? Because we were going to get out and fight these dudes. And like, we probably could go to the hospital. We were outnumbered, to say the least. And we were right in front of the fraternity. So it was not going to go well and with nowhere to go. But yo, man, sometimes you got to take an ass beating in the name of what's right. And the things that were being said were, as far as I'm concerned, the most hateful, like, fight-causing things I've ever heard in my entire life. And one of the girls, like, grabbed Sean by the wrist and was like, please don't do it. Please. And Sean, like, took a deep breath, and the cab started to move, and, like, we got out of there. But I'm telling you, we were seconds away from being like, all right, well, sometimes a man's got to do what a man's got to do. And we may not get out of here without a few bruises, but we're definitely giving the dude with the big mouth some bruises. Like, that dude's going to get his. And he didn't. So we ended up telling, like, our stories on the radio in Austin and on Orange Bloods, obviously. And then the Columbus Dispatch called us, like, on a Wednesday after the game. And they ended up doing a front page lead story on the treatment of Ohio State fans towards Texas fans. And we were, like, quoted, and they told bits and pieces of that story in the newspaper. If anybody ever wants to go through the Columbus Dispatch's archives, I guess the week after the Texas, because I may have a couple of those details wrong. Maybe it was Tuesday. Maybe they called us the next week. And it felt like it was a couple of days after the game, like after the new week had started. I remember at the time thinking, God, it's a little late to be writing a react from the next morning. The whole city is closed, by the way. God, I hope it's better than it was 20 years ago. It's a hell of a thing to be in a city that's just closed on Sundays. Imagine Texas liquor store, like outside of Texas liquor store at 9 a.m. That's the whole goddamn city at 2 p.m. Nothing's open. But there were couches in the street there was literal furniture in the street that had been burned. Everybody had a horror story. The thing that I would say is this year, the game's at 11 o'clock. They won't have had all day to drink. It will change, I think. But yeah, man, look, it'll be terrible. Their fans are awful. Their fans are awful. Worse, like they're terrible human beings. Except for the nice couple who happened to be from the state of Texas, but rooting for Ohio State, who warned us, sorry in advance for what's about to happen. She knew. And look, How does she even know? When that Texas and Ohio State game occurred in 2005, I think Ohio State had played 6 or 7 primetime games at night in the history of that stadium. If it sounds crazy that could even be possible, but they had never lost in primetime. Maybe it was as a ranked team. I don't know. That is like some undefeated stat. So what Texas did that night in Columbus had never been done before. How did she know? How did she know? Apologies, guys, for what's about to happen. Who the hell gets an apology before a crime is committed? Hey, man, apologies in advance for walking into that bank. Why? Just apologies, man. And then you walk in and the bank gets robbed. No, it was crazy. So, yeah, man, as far as I'm concerned, Ohio State fans are the scum of the earth. And the interesting thing about that entire experience is that if you'd gone to the Rose Bowl the January before, so 9 months earlier, and you tailgated and mingled with Michigan fans who were great. Michigan fans were great. You know what Michigan fans said? Hey, sorry for what you guys are going to have to deal with when you go to Columbus in September. They're like, you'll find out. And then after you play in Columbus, you realize, oh my God, Michigan fans are like from heaven. These Ohio State fans, they are from hell, man. Columbus, Ohio is a circle of hell. And those are the devil's demons that live there. Why do you think they're always setting shit on fire? Why are they always burning things? It's because that place is hell. And a good sports loss allows them to set stuff on fire and feel like they're at home. But yeah, I would go to Columbus again. The partying was great, man. The Friday night before the Ohio State game was one of the best travel Friday nights. It was better than anything I'd seen at Texas OU. The Friday night before, and so I would say this: Columbus was a jam the night before. It was awful for about 36 hours until we got out of there. All right, there we go. How about that? I tell you what, we'll take a slight little break just so that I can let everybody know. See, I'm doing this thing. I got to be honest. You guys don't know this. I never appreciate Chad more than when he's not here, because pushing all these buttons in this damn Restream studio, they're distracting when you're a one-man show and trying to look into a camera, and they're there, and you're there, and you're there, and you're there. And now we're here with Specs.
Shop Specs! 60 years in the Lone Star State, a one-stop shop so you're never late. Price is so low that you want to know
which way to Specs.
Come on, let's go.
Specs, fine spirits and finer foods. World-class service, that's all about you. Shop Specs.
It's how we do. A huge selection since 62.
Shop Specs.
Low priced, amazing. Here's to you. Cheers to savings.
I'll tell you what, every time I watch that Specs ad, Lisa is the woman in the video. I always notice something different. I can't tell if I have a crush on Lisa or not, because I always notice something different. She is so enthusiastic in everything they ask her to do. She's a team player. Because I've seen her, they have her line dancing and doing shit with a rabbit and stuff. And like, she's always enthusiastic. I couldn't fake that. Which is probably why I'm not doing Specs videos. They'd be like, okay, now do this thing with your hands. And I'd be like, and then it wouldn't work. Hey, real quick, Cotton, how dare you? How dare you say that Chad is always interrupting? That's me. Are you making fun of me? Am I the joke of even mentioning, of all the things I caught? You are accusing Chad? I feel like that's low key making fun of me, and I'm here for it. That's fair. I do interrupt the shit out of people. But you know what? Let me say this. And this is for everybody out there, okay? Some people do radio or shows like this on YouTube. And I'm telling you, I've seen it. Matter of fact, my guy Sean Adams he did a million radio shows, but one of the guys that he did a radio show with, and Chad has had the same experience as well. It's like, okay, I'm going to say this, and you're going to say this, and I'm going to say this, and you're going to say this, and I'm going to say this, and you're going to say this. And it's like all mapped out. And like, I'm about like, I want it to be like sitting at a barbershop. And I'm okay with being interrupted. I'm okay. And I realize the downside of that, it just sounds like a bunch of people talking over each other. But I like spontaneity. I like when people say something that make me react to such a degree that I have to interrupt them. And I hope I do that with them as well. Like I guess I'm combative that way. But what you will never get is formulatic, like, okay, Chad says something and I sit here patiently and I wait and then it's my opportunity. And like, that just sucks. I don't like that. Oh, okay. I'll do this real quick. Orange Bloods 01 says, Catch, expound on your tweet about Mike White's questionable strategy from last night. You know, first of all, I was a little surprised. I really thought that Kevin would get the start. I know that I get it, I guess, kind of. I do I understand deciding to go with Mac Morgan at the beginning of the game. They had success with that in the Super Regional. So, you could see, okay, I thought they might ask Morgan to go further than they did. And then when they brought in Cambria Salmon, the freshman, who, by the way, sick changeup, right? Like, I don't know that I've been sitting around watching a lot of college softball this year, but I'm telling you, I've noticed her changeup as much as anybody else's changeup that I've seen in a bunch of college softball this year. Talented young pitcher, but a young woman who had allowed 10 runs over the course of her last 3 playoff games over the course of 8 1/3 innings. So her ERA in the last 10 innings is over 10. But no, well, that's not right because not all those runs were earned. How about this? Surprise, the Texas defense behind her allowed a bunch of unearned runs, but she'd given up a lot of runs. So when Mike White goes to her in the third, it made I got it. I was like, okay, well, they're going to ask Tegan to go 5th, 6th, and 7th. They're essentially going to ask Salmon to go and do what Morgan did, which is go through the lineup once, get you deeper into the game. She did that. But I felt like coming out of the 4th inning, okay, well, she's gone through the lineup once. And like they hit some balls hard on her. In fact, you think about the double that changes the game. She puts her arm up in the air like it was like a routine fly ball. And it was like, no, they smoked that one, young lady. That one is getting hit to the wall. And leading up to that, I just thought you're 3 innings away. You're 9 outs away from a national championship. Bring in Keegan or Keevan because she's your best pitcher. And they didn't. Well, they did later in the night. That was the thing that that's the thing I didn't understand is that if Cavan's going to come in and, sorry, I said Keevan. Cavan is going to come in is Tegan Cavan. And I always want to go Tegan Keevan, which obviously is not her name. Cavan comes into the 6th inning, so she was available, and he was going to use her. The time to use her was the inning before. The moment that Salmon, I mean, she threw over 30 pitches in that inning. And the game gets away from Texas on a hit batter on a 1-2 count. And then the bases are loaded. And she throws a wild pitch. And I think it was the very first pitch. Like, no one went out there to calm her down. Like, I just thought the man management on that was pretty terrible. Because I look, when they put Salmon in, given what had happened to her in the postseason in the previous 3 games that she's pitched in, none of which she went very deep in, none of which she went without allowing a run. This felt like a game where, man, don't give up a run. You have to keep putting zeros up on the scoreboard. You got 2 innings out of her where she did exactly that. I felt like going to her for it. And I felt like this before the first pitch. So before she started to get into trouble, I was thinking in my head, that's a win. Don't risk making it a loss. You literally, if I told you before the game we're going to get 2 shutout innings from Salmon, don't ask for more. Would you have accepted it? And I think Mike White would have been like, I'm going to get 2 clean innings, nothing given up. Nope. And she's going to go through the heart of the lineup during one of those times? Yep. Deal. And it was as if he made a deal and then was like, no, go out there and do it again. And she didn't have it. And then she lost her composure and he allowed that to happen. And in the end, it ended up being something they just couldn't overcome. They ended up scoring 3 runs, but those first 2 changed the complexion of the game forever. And look, all they got to do is win tonight, and nobody will ever remember game 2. But I thought Mike White's fingerprints were all over that loss. And but I will say this, and this ultimately isn't at the root of Mike White. They got to play cleaner softball. They're averaging 2.5 errors a game so far in this College World Series in the championship round. And like, that's no way. They do that again tonight, they'll lose. All right. Text guy 2. Am I combative? Why am I combative? Is that about what I just said? I literally don't even remember what the hell I was saying beforehand. So, Sandman with the word of the day. Verbose. Hey, man. I'm, okay, Cotton. See, this is what happened when you let people have keyboards. You give people keyboards and they say things like that. Chad gets more than 50 words per show because he gets to do the live reads. He does more than 50 words on AV consultations every day. Stop. Real quick on the War Room before we break out of here. Because it's a Friday and I don't feel like going more than an hour today by my verbose lonesome. It's not the biggest weekend of the year. I think everybody realizes that, right? But some real interesting visitors. And for me, it's kind of impossible for me to look at the visitor list and not kind of focus on Lamar Brown, the 5-star out of Baton Rouge University Lab, same high school, if I remember correctly. I think that was the Marcus Spears class. I think Marcus was out of University Lab. They have been thirst trapping. Lamar Brown's been thirst trapping Texas, and Texas has been down for it, like somebody who follows the Kardashians on Insta, or the gram or Instagram. I don't even know how the cool kids say it anymore. Well, I should probably just say it Instagram instead of saying it Insta, trying to sound cool and maybe said it backwards. What happens when you're 49? Suddenly you start to doubt yourself on the little things. They have been thirsting after Lamar Brown, and it hadn't quite been able to gain momentum, but they hadn't given up. Sark won't give up on guys like this. Maybe this guy's the Justice Terry of this recruiting class. They love him so much. They will not give up. Well, by God, they got him. They're getting him into town for an official visit. And nobody nationally is going to give Texas a chance on this. In fact, Sucamel wrote in the War Room, most observers feel that Brown is all but a lock to wind up signing with LSU. I don't believe it. I'm not saying he won't end up at LSU. I'm telling you that every year for the last 3 years, Texas has gone into the summer with a crush on a kid, a national badass, and they get that kid on campus and his recruitment changes forever. And I think they've been waiting to get Lamar Brown on campus. I also think if there's a guy in this recruiting class that they'll go crazy with an NIL offer in mid to late November, it'll be Lamar Brown. So, look, there's some real interest. Just watch it. Just watch it. I just have a real sneaky feeling that in the 48 hours after that kid gets home from his visit back to Baton Rouge, we're going to hear Texas made a move. And everybody's going to say LSU, 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 and they're probably right. They're probably right. By the way, I'm looking to see if I missed any super chats. I didn't see any, but, I don't want anybody to get, I do. You know what? I did. Stop the show. Jay Lee for $5. You gave me $2. I bitched you out. Then you gave me $5, and then I ignored you. Deep ball and how would he deal with pass rush were questions about Quinn coming out of high school. Did or does Arch have anything like that needs answered? Jay, I had like 3 main concerns with yours. I think you outline a couple of them. I did have deep ball questions. I'm telling you, if you go back and watch the high school stuff, that guy was underthrowing 4.8 guys. Now, there would be long touchdown passes, but you'd watch receivers stop and wait for the ball to arrive. And when I called that out, I would hear, he threw the ball 75 yards at a camp catch. What do you know? And it's like, well, no, I'm not doubting how far distance-wise he can just chunk a football. I'm saying he doesn't throw the deep ball well. The other thing was he played in such a clean pocket at South Lake Carroll that what would happen with his mechanics when the pocket wasn't so super clean. If you go back and you watch those South Lake Carroll highlight tapes, he's just throwing the ball with nobody near him. Even when they would move him out, he's very rarely getting pressured, which led to in the state championship game against Westlake, where he finally started to feel some real pressure, and it impacted him significantly. And so, it was because he saw so little pressure. I can remember watching Sam Ellinger, and Cade Klubnik falls into this category as well. But one of the first things I loved about Sam was how brave he was in the pocket. And you'd think, well, he was playing at Westlake, he probably had perfect protection. Man, on his highlight tapes in high school, he didn't. He had guys constantly in his face. And Sam, not being a big guy, he would throw strikes. I love that about Sam. You don't really see that from Quinn. You'd see it in a guy like Cade Klubnik, though. You'd see him in the face of traffic and pressure around him still maneuver and throw the ball well, and I didn't think that Quinn did that. So, yeah, as it relates to Arch, I think the biggest thing was speed of the game and the competition they played against, Jay. And Onwar and I talked about this yesterday, as a matter of fact. When Arch first got to campus, there were some doubters. I can remember we were going to do a war room, and it was during the spring. And Anwar had a source tell him that, like, if there was a game today, Arch would be 4th and a walk-on would be ahead of Arch. It was really early in camp, first week. And I was like, well, Anwar, you're not putting that in the war room, because that'll be on your tombstone, right? Arch will end up being the number 1 pick in the draft, and people will hate on you for. I was like, we're just not going to put that in a war room. And it ended up being a wise thing not to report, but the sourcing was really good. And it just felt like that screaming fire in a crowded theater, when maybe you don't want to necessarily, you don't want to scream fire in a crowded theater when everybody has like pitchforks and hatchets and stuff like that. But yeah, I think when Arch first got here, just the overall speed talent. It was such a leap up. Everybody makes a huge leap up from high school to college, but at the quarterback, given the brain activity and the thinking that's on, and it's not always like just go out physical somebody. It's rarely that, actually. I think it took him, I don't know, a few months. By the end of spring football, people weren't saying things like the walk-ons would be ahead of him. And then by the time we got to the fall of his true freshman year, you were starting to hear, oh, man, Arch is starting to get it. Arch is starting to look like a dude. And then by the time you got towards the end of that 2023 season, it was okay. Arch looks good. And then you saw that a lot last year. There's a lot of positive commentary, eliminates bad throws. Like he's just, I think the real knock on him was that he wasn't that good, honestly. There were people who were like, look, he's playing against bad competition. He's being propped up by the last name, and you can't tell anything because of the level of competition, just how good he is. Oddly enough, it doesn't feel like it's taken that long for that to no longer be an issue. But that was probably the issue. Nobody ever doubted Quinn's talent. There was actual doubt about Arch's talent, which is weird because he is more physically talented than Peyton and Eli. He is. Those guys are not good athletes. They were great quarterbacks. Peyton's Peyton, right? Like I don't even say that. He gets to go by one name. Of course, Eli does too because they're Mannings. One day Arch will just be known as Arch. There's nobody that will take that from him, right? There's no famous Arch. There's Archie, but he'd be the first Arch. Nobody's claimed it. It's not like, I would imagine there's a bunch of LeBron Jameses, like a lot of kids out there named LeBron. I bet. I bet in the next 5 years there will be a football prospect who will be, because there's a bunch of kids named after Kobe. Oh, I see it all the time. So we'll get a LeBron, and no matter how good that kid is, he doesn't get to be LeBron. It's like if Kareem Abdul-Jabbar had a kid. I'm sorry, Kareem is taken. Sorry. Emmett Mosley. Like, sorry, Emmett, but Emmett was taken. It really sucks if you are named after somebody in the Bible, I mean, you can't be James. Like James Worthy's trying to put a claim in. It's like, no, man, John, Moses. I met a Moses yesterday, and he was like, oh, you ain't ever getting that name. There's always going to be a Moses. Jesus. Some names get claimed. Arch, all I'm saying is I think Arch. When we say 50 years from now, Arch, everybody's going to know who that is. Random thought, but nevertheless, here we are. All right. Other things real quick about the recruiting weekend, because I just continue to filibuster because that's what I do. I'm verbose. Keep an eye on Jamarian Carlton, the kid from Temple. He started taking officials to Tech and LSU, A&M, Baylor, Texas will get visits. That's the top 5. Alan Clark doing a really good job in that recruitment, new defensive ends coach. And he's been such a rock star in recruiting for Texas so far, and he continues to do it, which is really interesting because we know that the defensive line recruiting was kind of held down by one guy last year, and it seems like Alan Clark is a guy whose name we hear as much or more than anybody. Most of the guys in town this weekend, I just mentioned Carlton, most of them from out of state. I mean, here are the states represented on the visits: Georgia, California, Arizona, Mississippi, Louisiana, multiple Louisiana guys. We got a Hawaii. We got an Alabama. Got more kids from Louisiana. And Xavier Crowell will be another one. I mentioned that on some level, I want to keep an eye on Lamar Brown. I've been waiting to see Xavier Crowell's visit for a long time. And a little bit like Brown, most people think Crowell's not leaving the state of Alabama, that he'll go to Bama, and that's just the way that it is. But he does like him some Texas. He does. And this is Texas's chance. They don't necessarily have to leave as the leader with these guys because there will be more to this recruitment. But on guys like that, they need to come out of it with those guys seriously thinking, I could play there easily. And I want to come back. Those are the two things you really want them thinking. You want them thinking, I could see myself living there. And before I make my decision, I'm definitely going back. Those are the pathways towards getting another commitment. What you don't want Crowell to do is hop on a plane on Sunday and go, cool. Well, hey, man, I saw Texas. They were great, but I've seen it. I'm good. That is the opposite. And that happens with a lot of these guys. It's like, oh, I crossed that off my box. Had a blast. But I'm good. I saw it. And you just want to come away with this with the I saw it. I want to see that again. That's the goal. Baby steps, because NIL will take place later in the year. There's so many moving parts on all of this, least of which not a settlement, that we technically don't even know what the hell's going on with that right now. So, yeah, keep an eye on it. Lots of guys coming in. I don't know that I would expect a lot of fireworks on Sunday evening. I know we're expecting at least one commitment. I know there's a story in the database that's already written, which means I need to get to work and get an instant analysis piece ready to go as well. I'm not even going to read the one that I pulled up. But I will pull this one up. Last comment. Let me see. I got to scroll back down towards the bottom. Colby says the softball weather forecast has slightly shifted. Showers are now expected to begin around 8 with thunderstorms at 9. That's about a 2-hour delay from the earlier prediction. I don't know. The game it'll get played at some time or another, but why would you even play I always say, why the hell do they play that in Oklahoma City in the first place? Who the hell wants to go to Oklahoma City? I'd rather go to Tulsa than Oklahoma City. And not because of the slideshow. I had more fun in Tulsa. If I remember correctly, the casinos. Maybe they got casinos in Oklahoma City now, but there were casinos outside of Tulsa. I did well in those. Man, I played a poker game. I remember playing the cash game at the casino right outside of Tulsa in the 05 Oklahoma State game, the Friday night before. I busted this guy up at the table, just busted him up. I want to say I flopped a set and just crushed him. And he lost like about $200 in the hand. It wasn't like the biggest loss of all time. He cried at the table. He cried at the table and was like, that's bill money. I just lost the bill money. You know what? You have to tell someone who loses their money at the poker table and then starts to complain at the table about how they've lost money they couldn't have lost. You got to go, man. You ain't got to go home because maybe you ain't got one now, but you got to get the hell out of here. It's like buying a bunch of scratch-offs and then, I didn't get my money back. Well, yeah, man, you bought lottery tickets. What do you think was going to happen with the bill money? You think it was going to triple? Dumbass. That's when I turned into Red Foreman from that 70s show. Dumbass. All right, guys, we're going to wrap it up. Like, comment, subscribe to the page if you haven't already done so. Thanks to Specs for being the partner of the chat and sponsor of the chat. And special shout out to Texas Card House. I'll probably go play some hijack poker right now. I wish I could share my screen with you right now, and you could just watch me play some hands. I just talk it out loud. Watch this 2-7 offsuit. I'm just going to put all my chips on the table. They'll run. Oh no, somebody called. We could just have a good time together. But no, I'm going to go have a good weekend. Lots of stuff going on. Scan that QR code to get the hookup over at orangebloods.com until Monday, unless there's breaking news. And of course, you'll have football friends and all kinds of stuff on the weekend. We always do. You guys have a great weekend. Play safe, but have fun. And we'll talk to you soon.